Hi friends, welcome to A Wonderful Sheep and welcome back to another reading journal video. If you are new here, every month this year I've been doing a reading wrap-up video where I talk about and journal about the books I read that month. I've been really enjoying working in my reading journal this year. For this month, I'm also doing another Dutch door type spread where I cut off the tops of the pages so that the title May Reading Wrap Up will read across all of the pages for those spreads. May was an interesting month. May was very prolific in terms of all the books I read. I finished quite a few, but at the same time, I felt like I hit a bit of a reading slump towards the middle end of the month where I was just starting so many books and not really getting into them. I didn't finish quite a few books. And I actually ended up rereading, or rather re-listening to some books towards the middle of the month to try to get me over this like stretch of just not really enjoying what I was reading and not being very interested. And so that's actually what the first section of the reading wrap up is the rereads. I revisited Ali Hazelwood with Bride because I saw a skip the line copy of it in my Libby app. And I also reread The Love Hypothesis, which it's kind of funny because in my memory, and this might be recency bias, but I thought Love theoretically was my favorite Ali Hazelwood book. But listening to The Love Hypothesis on audio, I had a good time. It was fun. Ali Hazelwood's writing is always just fun and snappy and like it moves along. So that helped. And also I re-listened to Marrying Winterborne by Lisa Kleypas, who is my favorite historical romance author, and Winterborne is probably my favorite of Kleypas's heroes. It's probably my favorite book. Mary Jane Wells does an excellent job narrating. She's my favorite audiobook narrator, so those books sort of helped me get over that reading slump. I also read a bunch of historicals this month. I picked up The Devil of Downtown by Joanna Shupe because it is the next book for the read along on the Fated Mates podcast, which is a podcast about romance books. And so I'm looking forward to see, or hear rather, what Sarah and Jen from the podcast have to say about it. I enjoyed it. It was nice. It was kind of fun to read a historical set in the US and like in New York City versus England, which is the usual setting for historical romance, for me anyway. I am trying to broaden my horizons, even within the historical romance genre, and like branch out into other locations and other ethnicities and other stories. But actually, in May, I did read a bunch of Sherry Thomas's books, which were mostly set in England. Of those, I think Ravishing the Heiress was my favorite. And I recommend it with the warning that it will, if it doesn't infuriate you, it will devastate you. It will destroy and wreck you because it's a book where there's a marriage of convenience. The two main characters are married because of circumstances, but the heroine is secretly in love with the hero and the hero is not. And there's just 8 years of unrequited love and pining. And I just wanted to shake the hero and tell him to snap out of it so bad. And I've also never cried in a book where it didn't involve character death. But in this book, at the declaration of love scene, I cried. It was devastating. So if you can get through all of the pining and heartache-ness, it was quite good. But I also really enjoyed Sherry Thomas's The Hidden Blade, which was the first book I've read with like wuxia elements, the type of martial arts fighting like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. It's the prequel to My Beautiful Enemy, which I'm waiting for right now, and I'm looking forward to that because it's set in China, the UK, and also I think the second book will be set in like Central Asia, so that'll be exciting. But moving on, I also read 2 nonfiction books. The first was The Backyard Bird Chronicles by Amy Tan, which I heard about because I saw it on the NPR Book of the Day podcast, and I quite enjoyed it. I am a bit of I can't call myself an amateur birder, but I do like looking up birds when I see them to try to identify them, and same with plants and flowers. So I really enjoyed her illustrated Backyard Bird Chronicles about her birding experience from before the pandemic and then through the pandemic. And then I also read Declutter Your Life, which was actually really helpful. The first 3 chapters sort of setting up why it's hard for us to declutter and throw things away and get rid of stuff, like the emotions that are attached to belongings, not just like emotional attachment, but like the feelings of guilt and hope and fear, scarcity, those types of feelings about stuff were really eye-opening for me, and I feel ready to declutter, but we'll see. And now it is a new day, and actually off camera, I journaled about the graphic novels and memoirs, as well as the fiction books that are not rom-coms or romances that I read this month. From the graphic novels, I think Lunar New Year Love Story was my favorite. It was really sweet, just a lovely young adult story about first love, and the main characters are Asian American, and the art was also really beautiful. And now I am journaling about my favorite books of the month. The first was The Ministry of Time by Kailiane Bradley. I really enjoyed this book. The premise is that it is a time-traveling romance and also a spy thriller. And it really has a bunch of different genres mixed together. There's romance, there's also sci-fi elements. And the premise is that the Ministry of Time, the UK government, has this technology to travel back in time and extract people from history and bring them back to the present. So that's what they've done. They've gone through different phases in history and brought back people who were known to die. Like, they didn't bring back people who are living healthy lives, but they extracted people who are just about to die and brought them to the present. And there's people from 1600s, 1700s, and the male main character is from an Arctic exploration in the 1800s. And he's assigned like a handler. He's assigned an agent of the government who will be their sort of guide to modern life. They live together and they help them adjust to modern life. And that is the female main character, who remains unnamed throughout the book. And I enjoyed like the romance, the thriller aspect of like whodunit. There's a little bit of a spy mystery involved that was a little bit confusing, to be honest. I would need to reread it, but it was interesting. And I was just really, I was really into the story. There's a lot of moments that really made me laugh. And I think her writing was really fun because there were a lot of points where it was clearly showing us a situation instead of telling. Like, through the dialogue, you could imagine the situation, the scenario that was happening. That was really fun. This little funny creature sticker I'm placing here is to remember one of the lines that really made me laugh. At one point, the female main character explains the concept of like germs and bacteria and infections to Graham, the main male character, and he's not having it. He's like, I do not accept this situation. I don't believe you. And then later she smiles and he replies very dryly, your germs are showing. And there's a lot of like that dry humor, that dry wit in the book that's really fun to read, and a lot of fun situations that would naturally arise from having a Victorian gentleman suddenly dropped into the middle of the 21st century. But at the same time, the book also had a lot of uncomfortable and thought-provoking situations, and made you think about race and identity and power and language and how history is made. So there are a lot of really deep themes to grapple with, but also a lot of fun and witty, light situations. So I really want to reread it again at some point and see how I feel about it the second time through. And my second favorite book of the month was 내 고양이 방문지, which is a Korean illustrated journal about the author's story of adopting a cat and like becoming a family with this cat. It was really sweet, and it really just inspired me to want to write and be able to draw equally heartwarming stories. I also read some contemporary romances this month. I picked up Kate Clayborn's The Other Side of Disappearing, her new book, and I liked it. I think Kate Clayborn's writing is very rhythmic. Like, there is a clear like rhythm to her writing that's so descriptive. Like, you can hear what's happening as you're reading. Like, I can hear the words off the page. It's really interesting. And I also read my first Christina Luen books. I really enjoyed Love and Other Words. It has such sweet first love vibes and summer vibes. And if you like reading about book lovers, I think you'd like it. I also read the first two books in the Kiss Quotient trilogy by Helen Huang. The first is The Kiss Quotient and the second is The Bride Test. I have seen multiple authors, including Christina Forrest and Ali Hazelwood, mentioned The Kiss Quotient as one of their favorite books or a book that inspired them in their writing. Both the books feature neurodivergent characters, autistic characters, and I enjoyed them. I actually think I like The Bride Test more. One, because the female main character was not Western, and I think that was an interesting perspective to read. And also, the premise is about a mail order bride, and it made me confront preconceived notions I had about mail order brides or arranged marriages, because you got to see her perspective, where she's coming from, her predicament, and like the choices she has to make for her future, for her family's future. And so it wasn't just like a straight-laced, very simple love story. There's like depth to it, and I'm rooting for her, but also recognizing she has hard choices to make. So like I said in the beginning of the video, I did finish a lot of books in May, but it was just a weird month because I also didn't finish quite a few books. It was definitely a month of trial and error where I was just picking up a lot of books and not really getting into them. But thankfully, there were some good reads, some favorite books from this month, and I'm proud of myself for intentionally reading Asian authors this month. And I definitely want to continue to diversify my reading, read more own voices and diverse stories. And now for the cover page in my reading journal, I knew I wanted to do a rose theme for May since the wild roses are beautiful during the month in Seoul and probably around the world. But I didn't know how I wanted to portray it, so finally it was time to film, and it's the end of the month, and I did a cut paper collage of roses. And initially I was going to do this like single rose stem, so I'm cutting out the stem, and it was going to be facing up, but later I have sort of a stroke of genius, and you'll see in a second, I turn it around to connect it to my bookshelf, and I cut out the bookshelf out of that same very delicate green paper, which is quite hard to cut. It's very, very thin, so it's a little wonky, but I kind of like the wonkiness as well. And I'm actually really pleased with how this May bookshelf / cover page turned out. I think it's my favorite of the month, April being my least favorite. I don't think I've actually shown the full April cover page on this channel because I just did not like it, and I'm thinking of actually redoing it and covering it up. But I will probably do a half of the year flip through in my reading journal at the end of this month, so you may see it then, or you may not. I may have covered it up by then. But that was May in reading. Prolific month, weird month. Looking forward to some new releases in June though, so hopefully that'll be fun. A lot of new contemporary romance books that are publishing in June. All right, here is the final flip through. This journal is getting quite chunky. I don't think I'll be able to fit all of 2024 in here, but we'll see. First, the May cover page. I still haven't added the books to the bookshelf just because I like how this looks right now. And then my books borrowed and progress bars. I had a little space left over, so I added some stats from Storygraph. The books to check out, sort of just brain dump page, and some notes on radical acceptance, which I was listening to on audio. Again, had some space left over at the bottom, so I drew some of the lion masks from Lunar New Year Love Story, and I added a little graphic. Don't look too closely, it's not that well drawn, of all the books I read by Asian or AAPI authors during the month of May. Quite a few books. And then here is the wrap-up section. I added sort of green leaves as a background to the title, and I think it looks kind of cool. It kind of looks like washi tape. So I just added some more embellishments and a little more stickers and some highlights to the spread you saw me making. Really pleased with how this patterned washi tape matches the sidebar of this book and also the color scheme of the hidden blade. And that's the end of the wrap-up. I really have fun making these spreads. It's less pressure than making these, full page spreads, as much as I love these too, but I'm thinking about what I can do for June if I'll continue like this, because This method means I don't really use this book that much during the month other than to fill in the progress bar. So I'm wondering if I should do more like a reading journal where I keep sort of like a daily or near daily diary of what I'm reading, like June 5th, started so and so, these are my thoughts, and try to like jot them down as I'm reading because I don't do that anywhere else. And that might make this journal more interactive, just I'll reach for it more during the month. We'll see. Anyway, thank you again for watching. Hope you're all staying safe and well, and I will see you next time. Bye.